Sometimes the danger heading toward you isn't walking beside you. It's the truth chasing you from behind. Terminal B at Skyline International Airport in Phoenix simmered under the heavy summer heat, as if the sun itself pressed its ear against the roof, listening. Between the muffled boarding calls and the soft drag of suitcase wheels, Officer Logan Brooks, a veteran security agent with too many ghosts in his past, kept his eyes sharp. At his side, Ranger, a Belgian Malinois with instincts that bordered on supernatural, sniffed the polished floor like he sensed something no human could see, something that had been moving toward them for years without ever making a sound. The summer heat over Phoenix shimmered like molten glass above the runways of Skyline International Airport, turning every metal surface into a mirror of burning light. Inside Terminal B, Officer Logan Brooks moved with the steady, grounded rhythm of a man who had spent too many years pretending danger did not still live inside his bones. At 38, Logan carried the kind of face people noticed only after the second glance. Sharply cut jawline, faint stubble shadowing his cheeks, close-cropped dark brown hair showing early silver at the temples, and eyes the color of dried riverstone, watchful and a little tired. He had once been easygoing, even playful, but the death of his closest friend in a covert military operation 15 years earlier had carved something quiet and heavy inside him. He worked security now because stability felt safer than meaning, and because routine kept the ghosts in their corners. At his side walked Ranger, a 5-year-old Belgian Malinois with lean muscle, dark sable coat, and amber eyes sharp enough to slice through the noise of the airport. Ranger was known among handlers as too clever, too intuitive, the dog who hears things before they happen. Logan trusted Ranger's instincts more than he trusted most humans. Maybe because Ranger never lied, and maybe because Logan understood the language of wounded creatures better than the language of people. The terminal thrummed with its usual chaos. Crying children, rolling suitcases, the metallic echo of announcements repeating like distant thunder. The air smelled of perfume, sweat, and faint coffee. Logan scanned the crowd, shoulders loose, movements patient, but a quiet pressure lived beneath his ribs, the familiar sense that something today was slightly off-key. He didn't know why until he saw her. Emily Carter entered through the glass doors, the kind of woman who looked like she had spent her life preparing to go unnoticed. She was around 30, tall but with a gentle posture, her blonde hair tied back in a neat, low ponytail, her skin pale from stress rather than delicacy. She wore a loose white blouse stretched softly over the curve of a late-term pregnancy and a light blue summer coat chosen more for modesty than style. Her flats were scuffed, her shoulders tense, and though her posture was calm, her eyes, hidden partly behind inexpensive sunglasses, carried the kind of storm one tries very hard to conceal. In her hands, she clutched 2 paper bags as if letting go would mean losing something far more valuable than groceries. Logan had seen anxious travelers, but anxiety was usually loud, frantic. This woman's calm was too perfect, too deliberate. The way people look when they are holding their breath through their entire lions, that was when Ranger stopped. His paws froze against the polished floor, ears rising, muscles tightening like pulled wire. Logan felt the jolt through the leash. Ranger never froze like that. Not unless he sensed explosives, blood, or truth. "Easy, boy," Logan murmured, but Ranger stepped forward, neck low, and began to bark, not aggressive, but sharp, urgent, as if warning a child about an oncoming storm. Emily's head lifted slightly, but she did not flinch. Instead, she turned her face just barely toward Ranger, and through the tinted lenses of her sunglasses, Logan caught a glimmer that made the hair on his arms stand up. Recognition. Not fear, not confusion. Recognition. "Ma'am, I need you to stop for a moment," Logan called out, keeping his voice level. Emily hesitated, her fingers tightening on the bags. She took 2 steps, then her knees buckled. The sound of her collapse cut through the terminal like a dropped glass. Paper bags burst open, spilling documents, small amber bottles, a worn stuffed bear, and a crumpled envelope scrawled with a single word: "Sorry." Logan dropped beside her instantly. Her skin was clammy, her breathing uneven. Ranger continued barking, but the tone had changed. No longer warning, but panic, the kind of sound he made only when something was deeply wrong. As Logan reached for Emily's wrist to check her pulse, he noticed her left hand clenched so tightly it trembled. Gently, he pried her fingers open. Inside her palm was a tarnished military dog tag. The engraved name hit him with the blunt force of a fist: Ryan Hayes. Logan's breath caught. The world shrank. Ranger whimpered. Ryan Hayes had been Logan's closest friend, a soldier with sun-cracked laughter, a stubborn sense of honor, and a death that still stalked Logan's dreams. And yet, here was his tag, in the hand of a stranger collapsing on the floor of an airport on a sweltering summer day. As paramedics pushed through the crowd, Logan felt something cold slip into his chest. Ranger leaned close to Emily, whining softly, as if trying to speak a truth no one else could hear. Logan looked at the dog tag, then at the envelope marked "Sorry," and understood with an almost painful clarity that this moment was not random. It was the beginning of something that had been moving toward him for years. And whatever Emily Carter carried, inside her bags, inside her past, or inside her womb, was never meant to reach this airport. The paramedics rushed Emily Carter away through the corridor, their stretcher wheels rattling across the polished floor as Officer Logan Brooks followed close behind, with Ranger pressed at his heel, the dog's ears pinned back in anxious concentration. Logan's mind churned like a machine that had suddenly lost control of its gears. Seeing the dog tag of Ryan Hayes in Emily's hand had torn open something he had buried with military discipline for years. Inside the airport's medical observation room, the air conditioning hummed with a sterile chill that felt out of place against the scorching Arizona heat outside. As one paramedic, a young man named Ethan Blake, tall and wiry with gentle freckles scattered across sunburned cheeks, took Emily's vitals, Logan examined her belongings. Ethan's nervous smile revealed a timid nature shaped by a childhood among 3 domineering older brothers, making him someone who avoided conflict and spoke softly to avoid stirring trouble. Emily lay unconscious on the examination cot, her breathing shallow, sweat gathering near her temples. Logan crouched beside her, trying not to look at the shape of the dog tag he had pocketed, afraid the weight of memory would drag him under. Ranger rested his chin on the edge of the cot, his amber eyes fixed on her face with an intensity that made Ethan swallow in a mixture of fascination and unease. "She didn't faint from heat," Ethan murmured, adjusting the cuff on her arm. "Her pulse is too irregular. Looks like shock. Or fear." Logan didn't answer. He felt the same tightening in his chest Ranger felt, a storm brewing in the seams of something he didn't yet understand. When Emily stirred for the first time, her lashes fluttered with an effort that looked painful. She opened her eyes slowly, and without lifting her head, whispered a name that sent a chill straight down Logan's spine. "Ryan." Her voice was barely audible, but Ranger let out a soft whine of recognition as if her words confirmed something primal inside him. Logan leaned closer. Emily, do you know Ryan Hayes? She blinked at him, the motion slow and heavy, her pupils dilated in confusion. When she finally focused on him, something tightened in her features. Recognition, but the kind that formed from a memory owned by someone else. You're Logan, she said weakly, though she had never seen him before this day. Logan's breath snagged. He had experienced combat intuition before, but this was different, stranger, as if the past had folded itself around this moment, choosing him for a responsibility he had never agreed to. Ethan stepped back as Emily shifted, clutching her abdomen as a fresh wave of pain rippled through her. Logan steadied her shoulder. Emily, I need to know why you had Ryan's dog tag. She hesitated, her throat constricting, and for a heartbeat Logan saw not fear but guilt bloom in her eyes. With trembling fingers she pointed toward the paper. Bags spilled across the counter. Inside one, hidden beneath a stack of folded documents, Logan found a sealed brown envelope with edges worn from years of handling. On the corner, written in blocky, slanted handwriting he recognized instantly, were the words, "For Logan Brooks, open only if she finds you." A cold shiver crawled down Logan's spine. Ranger whined again, pawing at Logan's boot as if urging him to open it. He hesitated only a moment before tearing it carefully. Inside was a single-page letter dated 12 years ago, the year Ryan had died. Logan's vision tightened as he read the first line aloud. "If Emily ever reaches you, it means I failed." His throat closed. Ranger pressed against him, sensing his unraveling posture. Emily watched him with a haunted expression, as if afraid of what the letter would reveal. The rest of the page was written in the frantic rhythm of a man racing against something unseen. Ryan wrote of a woman named Nadia, a translator who had saved his squad more than once, and how they had both discovered information they were never meant to see during a covert recovery operation. He wrote of an organization called Aegis 9, people who acted without insignias or oversight, who believed Emily, unborn at the time, was part of something they needed to control. Logan jolted when he reached a sentence underlined twice. "They will take her if they find out she exists. You are the only one I trust to keep her safe." He closed his eyes, jaw trembling with the force of grief he had refused to feel for years. Ethan looked between the two of them, bewildered but too afraid to interrupt. Conflict terrified him, but he could sense instinctively that this moment was too sacred to break. Before Logan could ask Emily anything more, the automatic lights flickered, a harmless glitch in any normal day, but Ranger stiffened, growling low, tail straight like a spear. Logan's instincts sharpened instantly. "What is it, boy?" Ethan started to answer, but froze when footsteps echoed outside the hall, measured, controlled, too synchronized to belong to airport staff. A shadow passed the frosted window. Another followed. Emily's breathing quickened. "They found me," she whispered, terror sharpening her voice. Logan moved between her and the door, adrenaline snapping through his nerves like breaking wire. He glanced at Ethan, whose freckles drained of color. "You need to leave. Now." Ethan backed toward the rear exit, hands shaking. Logan reached for his holster. Ranger braced beside him, and the letter from Ryan trembled in his fist. The door handle turned. The unknown stepped closer. And Logan understood one devastating truth, deep in his bones. Whatever was coming through that door was the reason Ryan died, and Emily Carter had not stumbled into his life by accident. She had been sent. Or hunted. The door handle turned with a slow, metallic click that slid straight into Logan Brooks's nerves like a blade of ice, and before he could raise his voice or weapon, the door swung inward to reveal two figures dressed in white paramedic coats, each holding a clipboard, moving with the polished calm of trained professionals. But their movements were too synchronized, too precise, predatory instead of medical. The first man stepped inside with the quiet confidence of someone who believed lies were simply another language he had mastered. He was tall and broad-shouldered, his skin a deep walnut brown, his head shaved smooth, and a thin white scar cut across his jaw like a punctuation mark to a violent history. His badge read Victor Hale, though Logan doubted the name belonged to him. Victor's eyes were cold, flat gray, focused, the kind of eyes that belonged to someone who once followed orders without hesitation, until life taught him to question nothing but destroy everything. Behind him came a woman dressed in the same uniform, but with movements that were lighter, quieter, like she floated instead of walked. She was shorter, maybe in her mid-30s, with copper-red hair tied into a severe bun and pale skin dotted with faint freckles. Her features were sharp and fox-like, and her smile, small, controlled, never reached her eyes. Her badge read, Dr. Mara Quinn. Logan instantly recognized the air about her, someone who valued precision over empathy, a person shaped by academic brilliance but thinned into something ruthless by years of working under pressure. Ranger bristled, a low growl rumbling through his chest. Victor's gaze flicked to the dog, assessing, calculating, the way a hunter studies an animal that might bite back. "We'll take over from here," Victor said, his voice smooth, disarmingly calm. Ethan Blake froze near the rear exit, his freckles almost invisible as all color drained from his face. Logan tightened his stance, using his body as a barrier. "No one called additional medics," he said. "Credentials?" Mara Quinn stepped forward with a clipboard, revealing a laminated badge from a supposed Emergency Response Division, though Logan noticed the lamination was newer than the plastic, too recently manufactured for a government agency. Before he could respond, Emily let out a weak sound, almost a cry, and Ranger snapped toward her, barking sharply. Logan moved closer to the cot, just as Victor's hand drifted too casually toward a syringe clipped inside his coat pocket. A syringe that didn't look like anything a real paramedic would bring to a fainting case. Logan's instincts roared. "Step back," he ordered. Victor paused, his expression flattening, not with fear, but with mild irritation, as if Logan had become an obstacle he had been told to avoid making noise around. Mara's fingers twitched near her coat pocket, as though she was reaching for a hidden transmitter. Logan's hand brushed his holstered weapon. Ethan swallowed hard. The tension snapped all at once when the lights flickered again, and in that fleeting second of darkness, Victor lunged. Logan grabbed the cot, shoving it backward, knocking Emily safely out of reach. Ranger launched himself at Victor, his jaws clamping down on the man's arm, the impact echoing through the room like a slammed door. Mara Quinn dashed for Ethan, perhaps hoping he was the easier target. But Ethan, terrified, shaking, but suddenly galvanized by the reality that someone wanted to kill a pregnant woman, threw his weight against the counter, knocking a metal tray into Mara's ribs. She doubled over with a sharp gasp. Logan wrestled Victor away from Ranger, but Victor moved with the brute force of someone who had lived more years in covert operations than in daylight. His kick connected with Logan's leg, sending pain shooting upward. Logan recovered with practiced precision, slamming Victor into the wall. Emily crawled backward, clutching her stomach, panicked breath snagging in her throat. Mara reached into her coat and pulled out a small, silver device the size of a thumb drive with a glowing red light, its purpose unknown but clearly lethal. "Stop her!" Emily gasped. Logan grabbed the nearest object, a heart monitor, and hurled it across the room. It struck Mara's wrist, knocking the device from her hand, skittering under a cabinet. Sirens echoed somewhere in the hallway, airport security responding at last. Victor shoved Logan away with a snarl of frustration, grabbed Mara's arm, and the two retreated with a speed too efficient to be improvisation, disappearing through the opposite door just seconds before security flooded the corridor. In the aftermath, Ethan trembled as he locked the door behind them. Logan leaned against the counter, catching his breath, and Emily sat hunched on the cot, clutching her abdomen as Ranger pressed protectively against her knees. Airport security arrived in force, led by Captain Raymond Soto, a veteran officer in his 50s with salt and pepper hair, deep-set brown eyes, and a posture carved from decades of authority. He wore his uniform neatly despite the summer heat, and although he greeted Logan with the familiarity of a colleague, his stern features revealed a man whose trust came slowly and only after evidence proved loyalty. Logan explained the attack, the false uniforms, and the attempted abduction. Captain Soto's frown deepened with each detail, but when Logan mentioned the name Aegis 9, something flickered behind Soto's eyes. Recognition, faint but undeniable. "You need to move her," Soto said quietly, his voice dropping beneath the hum of alarms. "If they're involved, this airport isn't safe." Emily gripped Logan's hand with surprising strength for her fragile condition. "They won't stop," she whispered. Logan felt the weight of Ryan's letter burn in his pocket like a brand. Ranger nudged his leg, as if urging him forward. Logan nodded, a decision forming in the hollow space beneath his ribs. "Then we leave," he said. And as the sirens dimmed, the fluorescent lights steadied, and Captain Soto secured the hallway. Logan prepared for the truth he could no longer outrun. The past was awake, and it was coming for all of them. Logan Brooks moved fast once Captain Raymond Soto secured the hallway, guiding Emily Carter toward the service stairwell, while Ranger stayed close enough that his flank brushed Logan's leg with every step. A silent reminder that the dog was attuned to threats even before they appeared. The stairwell smelled faintly of dust and industrial cleaner, the kind of place travelers never saw, which made it the safest route Logan could think of on short notice. Emily held her stomach with both hands, her breaths sharp and uneven, but her eyes, wide, scared, and glistening, held an alertness that unsettled Logan. It was as if she sensed something deeper than danger, as if her instincts weren't entirely her own. Captain Soto had arranged for them to exit the airport through a restricted maintenance door and transfer into an unmarked vehicle driven by Officer Dean Mercer, a man whose personality could be summed up by the stiffness in his spine. Dean was in his early 40s, tall with a squared-off physique, a neck almost as thick as Logan's forearm, and a shaved jaw that revealed a prominent dimple in his chin. His close-cropped blonde hair and icy blue eyes made him appear carved from cold stone, but the faint tremor in his right hand, barely noticeable unless one looked closely, hinted at a past soaked in adrenaline and regret. Logan had heard fragments of Dean's story, a police chase years ago gone disastrously wrong, a civilian injured, and Dean carrying the guilt ever since, transforming him from a spirited rookie into a hardened officer who followed rules with religious devotion. When he opened the back door to the vehicle, his voice was clipped, professional. "Get in. We don't have long." Logan helped Emily inside while Ranger jumped up effortlessly, settling at her feet. Dean started the engine, jaw clenched so tightly that the muscles in his temple pulsed like trapped wire. As the SUV pulled away from the airport, Phoenix's summer heat radiated through the windows, turning the horizon into a trembling haze. Emily clutched the seatbelt strap, her knuckles pale. "I didn't know they would find me this soon," she whispered. Logan turned in his seat. "Emily, I need you to tell me everything. We don't have the luxury of time." She swallowed, hesitation tightening her features. Ranger lifted his head, sensing the ripple in her breathing. Before she could answer, Dean's radio crackled with static, followed by a voice they didn't recognize. Smooth, male, controlled. "Unit 7, redirect your route. There has been an update. Proceed to checkpoint C." Dean's eyes snapped to the rearview mirror, meeting Logan's instantly. "That's not airport command." Logan's hand drifted toward his holster. "Ignore it." Dean didn't argue. He swerved off the instructed path and turned into a residential street lined with tall palm trees and sun-scorched lawns. Behind them, a dark sedan appeared in the distance, accelerating. Logan stiffened. "Faster." Dean pressed the accelerator, but the sedan grew closer, weaving through traffic with surgical precision. Logan recognized that style immediately. Aegis 9 operatives never wasted a movement, never made their presence obvious until they were seconds from striking. "Emily, down!" he shouted. She ducked instinctively as Ranger planted himself between her and the window. Dean cut left sharply, tires screeching. The sedan followed with predatory accuracy. Logan rolled down the window, readying his sidearm. "Dean, keep steady!" But before Logan could aim, the sedan's passenger window lowered to reveal a man wearing a headset and dark tactical glasses. He wasn't shooting. He was observing, calculating. Logan felt a chill. They wanted Emily alive. That terrified him more. Just then, a battered pickup truck lurched out from a side alley, nearly colliding with the sedan. The sedan braked hard, momentarily blocked. Dean took the opening and veered onto a narrower street, slamming the SUV into the shade of a small abandoned gas station. He killed the engine, chest heaving. "We can't stay here," Logan said. "But we need another vehicle and we need it fast." Emily winced with pain, gripping her belly. "Logan, something's wrong." Logan knelt beside her, adrenaline spiking. Her skin was pale, clammy, but what struck him wasn't physical. It was the faraway look in her eyes, as if she were listening to something no one else could hear. "What do you mean?" he asked. Emily shook her head slowly. "I saw them. I don't know how, but I saw them. The people in the sedan. Their faces." Dean's eyebrows shot up. "You saw through walls now?" She didn't respond to his tone. She just stared at Logan with trembling certainty. "They're not going to stop." Logan felt it then. The shift in the air, the tightening of fate. Ranger whined softly, brushing his muzzle against Emily's knee, sensing her rising fear. Logan rose to his full height, determination settling into his bones like armor. "Then we don't stop either," he said. "Dean, get us a new car." And as the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the deserted station, Logan realized that whatever Emily was becoming, whatever Aegis 9 feared, they were already running out of time. Dean Mercer disappeared behind the abandoned gas station's office to scout for another car, while Logan stayed with Emily and Ranger, the scorching Arizona heat settling against the cracked pavement like a heavy blanket. The silence felt unnatural, thick with the residue of danger. Emily pressed her back against the SUV's door, breathing through the pain in her abdomen, her gaze unfocused, as though she was listening to something only she could hear. Logan crouched beside her, unsure whether to comfort her or demand answers he wasn't sure she even had. "Emily, what did you see?" he asked softly. She shook her head, blonde hair clinging to her damp forehead. "Not see, more like remembering someone else's vision. I don't know how to explain it." Her voice trembled, not from fear, but from the unsettling realization that her mind was no longer only her own. Before Logan could respond, Ranger suddenly lifted his head, ears stiffening, nose twitching sharply. Logan froze. Ranger didn't falsely alarm. A moment later, from behind the gas station, Dean's voice cut through the heat. "Logan, over here!" It wasn't fear, but urgency, an urgency he rarely allowed himself to show. Logan helped Emily to her feet, guiding her carefully as Ranger circled protectively. Behind the station, Dean stood beside a weathered blue sedan that had clearly seen better years. Its paint had faded to the color of desert sky, and a long scratch cut across its driver's side door like a permanent scar. Dean wasn't alone. Next to him stood Miles Hargrove, a man Logan had not expected to see in a place like this. Miles was in his mid-50s, tall but soft in the middle, with thinning gray-brown hair, uneven stubble on a jaw that seemed perpetually tense, and wireframe glasses slipping down the bridge of his nose. He wore a wrinkled brown button-up shirt tucked poorly into faded jeans, giving him the appearance of a man who slept in his car more than in beds. His hands trembled subtly, not out of weakness, but out of the constant overstimulation of someone who spent most of his life chasing secrets instead of friendships. Miles had once worked as a data analyst for a private intelligence contractor before a whistleblowing attempt had ended both his career and his faith in systems. "You didn't tell me it was this bad," Miles said to Dean, pushing his glasses up with a shaking finger. His voice was raspy, a smoker's voice, though Logan had never seen him actually smoke. Dean shrugged in his stiff, guarded way. "Didn't have time." Logan stepped forward, body still angled protectively in front of Emily. "Miles, why are you here?" Miles adjusted his glasses again, breathing heavily like he had jogged instead of walked. "Dean called. Said you pissed off someone you shouldn't have. Figured that meant Aegis 9. Logan's jaw tightened. "They're after her." He didn't have to point. Miles's eyes found Emily immediately, and they widened. Not with shock, but with recognition. "She looks like her," he murmured. Logan frowned. "Like who?" Miles hesitated, then exhaled heavily. "Nadia Velasquez, the translator your friend worked with. The one he tried to protect." The name hit Logan like a dull hammer. Emily lowered her head, one hand gripping her stomach as if bracing herself. "My mother," she whispered. A gust of hot wind kicked dust across the cracked pavement, the world momentarily shrinking to the four of them, and the hollow ache of truths long buried. Miles rubbed his forehead. "We need to move. They won't send trackers alone next time. They'll send retrieval teams." Logan glanced at the blue sedan. "Is it yours?" Miles nodded. "Runs better than it looks. And it's clean. Off the grid. No trackers, no digital footprint." Dean opened the back door for Emily and helped her inside with surprising gentleness for a man so rigid. Ranger hopped in beside her, positioning himself so his body shielded hers. Logan slid into the passenger seat, while Miles climbed into the driver's seat, with the awkwardness of someone who avoided physical activity whenever possible. As the sedan rumbled to life, Logan looked around the barren landscape, scanning for movement. For several miles, only the sound of wind and engine noise filled the car. Then Miles spoke, voice low. Before they kicked me out, I saw pieces of files. Project Seraphim, Nadia, Ryan, Aegis 9. The files weren't complete, but what I read said something big. Something about a child they couldn't trace but needed to control. Something they were afraid would become dangerous. Emily pressed her hand to her belly, a flicker of fear crossing her face. You mean me? Miles didn't answer directly, but the sadness in his eyes was enough. Dean kept his eyes on the road, his jaw locked with tension. The man who hated mistakes was now driving straight into one of the biggest messes of his life. Logan shifted in his seat. Miles, where are we going? Miles swallowed, then replied, somewhere no one will think to look. A safe house in the mountains. A friend of mine left it to me after he passed. It's quiet. Remote. Logan narrowed his eyes. What friend? Miles hesitated again. Former intelligence handler. Good man. He believed some secrets deserved to be buried forever. Emily leaned forward slightly, her voice barely a whisper. And mine? Miles didn't look back, but his grip tightened on the wheel. Yours was the one they couldn't bury. As the sedan climbed toward the distant mountain ridge, Ranger rested his head on Emily's knee, and Logan felt the weight of Ryan's words press deeper into his bones. Whatever waited at that safe house was tied to Emily, tied to Nadia, tied to Ryan, and tied to the storm that had finally found them. Sometimes, in the darkest corners of our lives, when fear grows louder than our own heartbeat, a strange thing happens. A light appears, soft, steady, unexplainable. Some call it luck, some call it fate. But many of us, we know better. We call it a miracle, because miracles rarely arrive with thunder or angels. They come quietly, in the form of people who step into our lives at the exact moment we need them most. A loyal dog who senses danger before anyone else. A stranger who chooses compassion over fear. A friend who risks everything. Or a truth long buried that finally rises to the surface, not to break us, but to guide us toward who we were meant to become. Just like Emily, Logan, Ranger, and all the souls woven into this story, we too walk through days filled with uncertainty. We carry worries about our children, our health, our home, our future. But if we look closely, really look, we will see that God never leaves us wandering alone. His signs are everywhere. In a timely phone call, in a change of plan, in a door closing so another may open. Even when we feel forgotten, He is working in the shadows, stitching small miracles into the fabric of our days. And maybe that is the greatest message of all. You were never abandoned. You were always guided. So as you finish this story, may you feel the warmth of hope settling gently into your heart. May you remember that every challenge you face may be the beginning of a greater purpose. And may God place His hand over you and your loved ones tonight, protecting you, blessing you, and giving you strength in the days to come. May the Lord bless every person watching this video. May He protect your home, heal your worries, and fill your heart with peace. If this story touched your heart even a little, please share it to bless someone else. Leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another story of hope, courage, and God's quiet miracles. Thank you for being here. May God watch over you always.